Welcome to this video on strategies for revising, editing and proofreading your work. We'll look at how you can build these important stages of writing into your routine and give you tips on how to be effective in this skill. Revising, editing and proofreading come towards the end of the writing process. You might begin revising after your first draft and continue the process throughout the other drafts that you produce. Once you have a draft that you're largely happy with, you'll begin editing, and only proofread once you have a final version to work on. The revising process might be something that you go through more than once. The aim is to take an overview of your draft and consider whether you have answered the question, given a clear argument, question whether your ideas need to be developed further or need more evidence, and whether you need to add more material or remove some elements. In the process of this, you might rewrite sections of the work, add in new sections, and switch around the order of paragraphs. One technique that you could use in revising is called text mapping. This means printing out your work single-sided and then laying all of the pages side by side to see how the whole piece of writing fits together. You can use colour and symbols to annotate your work and understand what you might improve. You might, for example, find several fragments or pieces of writing which are much shorter than a full paragraph. These fragments could be good candidates for expanding into full paragraphs or amalgamating into others. Once you've got a draft of your work that you're largely happy with, you can begin editing, which means looking at the work in more detail. At this stage, you'll have finished making major amendments to the structure and content of the work. You will want to look at each sentence and words used in those sentences. Assess whether these are clear and get your meaning across to the reader. Think about whether there is a rhythm and flow to your writing, or does it sound disjointed in parts? Proofreading is the final stage of the writing process, and this means looking in minute detail at your writing. The University of Leeds has a policy on proofreading that we'll briefly look at. The policy states that proofreading is defined for the purposes of this policy as the systematic checking and identification of errors in spelling, punctuation, grammar and sentence construction, formatting and layout in the text. The policy also states that responsibility for proofreading student work prior to its submission for assessment rests with the individual student as author. In other words, paying someone to proofread your work is not permitted at Leeds, and the work that you submit must be all your own work. It's a good idea to build time into your schedule to proofread. To get prepared, you could make a list of common mistakes that you often make in writing, and you could find these in previous feedback that you've had for your work. You'll probably need to proofread a few times, and each time proofread for different things. Language, formatting issues, referencing, etc. Printing a copy of your work out rather than reading it on screen is also a good idea. There are a number of techniques that you can use for effective proofreading. Let's look at 3. Reading your work aloud is one of the most powerful proofreading techniques. Your brain gets information in a new way, and you may notice things that you did not by reading it. Is the tone right? Is it too formal or chatty? Reading aloud can put you in the position of your reader as they move through the text. Errors in sentences, such as grammar or a missing word, can be hard to spot in print, but will sound wrong if you read aloud. Some sentences may not be grammatically incorrect, but sentences may sound awkward, being too long or repetitive, for example, and these problems are easily heard. Using a guide can also be helpful. Use a blank piece of paper to cover up the lines below the one that you're reading. This technique keeps you from skipping ahead of possible mistakes. It's easy to skip from one obvious error to another, for example, missing small ones in between. Another idea is to work backwards. When reading normally, we can become blind to mistakes as the brain automatically corrects these. Start from the last line on the last page and work backwards. This can help you to take your focus away from the content to focus on other elements such as fonts, font size, punctuation, spacing, etc. Finally, you could turn your work upside down. It might sound crazy, but it works really well for checking visual elements of a document, such as margins, spacing, layouts, etc. Skills at Library have checklists that you can use for revising, editing and proofreading your work. All of the checklists are available on the library website as downloads, and to find these, just search the website for proofreading. For further help with revising, editing and proofreading, or with developing your academic skills, please go to the library website for more information and support from Skills at Library.